One, two, three.
All right, good morning, everybody. This is Mike Yazena here in beautiful St. Augustine, Florida. This is Minorcan Magic handmade cast nets. And what I want to talk to you today is, and before I forget, if you want to contact me, you know, all my information is a website. There's a host of information on the internet about me and what I do. Home phone is 904-217-7974. Different email addresses. Probably the easiest one is usinamike@gmail.com. If you got any comments or questions, feel free to contact me. But what I want to go with you today is I keep getting people, guys and gals, mostly guys, who had no idea that these nets were made by hand. I mean, all the time. Most recently, it motivates me. I've gone over this stuff in numerous videos and little bits and pieces. I haven't really went into a lot of detail in it, in any particular one, so I thought I'd really hit on it today. And I'm only going to go back to the 1940s, as far back as I'm going. And what I use is 250-year-old technology. My Minorcan ancestor who settled in St. Augustine in 1777, this is the technology they were using. Well, let's go back to the 1940s. I want to show you a few things here that stand out. Early years was cotton. When I first learned to make nets, probably late 1940s, I would say, 48, 49 perhaps, this is what was being used. That's a spool of cotton. The cotton came in three sizes. The tag's gone, but it was different sizes were 620, 920, and 1220. Those were the three sizes that you would get. And they would start out a net with 1220 in the top where you handled it, and then they would drop down a ways and then put it back again at the bottom. They may go into 620 was too small. I never would recommend that. Never would ever use 620, but 920 and 1220 were the two sizes. Okay, that is a ball of cotton from early 1950s. With that, okay. Then the other things were nylon. Nylon came about in the late 1930s, and the early brands weren't so good, but I've got a couple here that were better. The best one to me, and it's been off the market for years, is the color is, that's not the color, it was lily white. It's just, that's from age. And the brand of this was Tanglefin. Been off the market for many years. I've researched it and found absolutely no trace of it, but I can remember buying. That's what I used. That's what I started making nylon nets with right there. Tanglefin 277, which was equal to probably a number 4, and it was bonded. Then later in the later 1950s, Brownie was out same time as this was, but here's one. This is Brownie nylon twine. It's from it's a bonded nylon also. These were ones that you could get back in the day. And then I've showed you this before, I know, but this is early monofilament. Look at that. It's like wire. I know Phil gets a kick out of this one, but I mean, they actually tried to make nets out of this. When the Japanese patented the automatic webbing machine, actually in 48, 49, by 52, just about all of your stuff was starting to be made with machine-made webbing. And that's how stiff that was. But they actually, when they made a net out of this, and it looked like a wire basket when you held it up. Anyway, equipment, I'm just going to show you 2 needles and a mesh board. The first one, Phil, you get a good look at that. That is my father's needle right there. That's the only needle that I knew that he owned. Whether he made that, he was born in 1900. I assume he was probably making nets by the same time I was. He's probably 10, 12, 15 years old, I guess. I don't know. We never discussed that. But you got that?
Yep.
Okay. That's a needle that's made out of, he talked about hickory. He talked about hickory, so I'm assuming that's hickory. It looks like oak to me, but again, you can't tell because it's the age of it, but I'm assuming that that's hickory. Anyway, that's the needle. I don't know what happened to his mesh board. I have no idea what happened to that. But that's a keepsake. I've never used that thing, by the way. I've always had made my own stuff. But now this is the first needle that I made. I know when I made this. I made this in 1955. It's made out of bamboo. We would ride the beach in our old beach buggies, and after a northeaster or storm, the big pieces of bamboo would wash up on the beach, and they'd be this big around. I mean, big old huge things. And that's, you take and split it. That piece of bamboo there was so big you could hardly see the contour starting in it. And but that's the thickness of the wall of it. What's that? Probably 1/8 of an inch, Phil. Looks like about 1/8.
Yeah, at least an eighth.
I would say that. And I cut this out by hand. So that's the first needle. That needle was made in 1955. I stopped using that probably 40, 50 years ago, and I switched to. Well, I made needles out of you name it, aluminum. A lot of them out of aluminum because I went and worked for a place that I had access to sheet metal, aluminum, and I used to make it out of 75. That's a hard braid of aluminum, which made a great needle. But anyway, that's my first needle, bamboo. Then mesh board, gauge, whatever you want to call it. This determines what size that net's going to be. And I'm going into that net right shortly now. But anyway, that mesh board is, I don't know what that's got to be. It's got to be oak, as hard as it is. It's a good hard wood, because I can't tell you how many mullet nets I've made with that gauge. And I mean, there's no dents in it. You can barely feel any from all the knots that I've tied with that thing. But anyway, that's for the mullet net. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a handmade net. Because a lot of people don't realize, they just simply do not realize, and I said this earlier, and this is what this is all about. Me doing this video is to talk about a handmade net. Now, you can go on the internet and look up custom handmade nets and find plenty of them. They're made out of, most of them are made out of monofilament, flat panels, machine-made webbing comes on a roll, and they cut it into panels and sew them together and makes a net. That's what you go and buy. And there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, for the average person that wants to get a net to catch bait, I mean, that's all you need. But I'm still doing this the old-fashioned way, and that is, as you can see, and people like this dacron. This is a fishing line. This is dacron. This is braided dacron. And people have really taken a shine to it. They don't want the nylon anymore, and they I don't know, maybe they like the color or what. But I've started making dacron nets probably, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. I was made all nylon up to that period, but then when I started making, I had requests to make a net out of braid. I had trouble finding the only braided nylon I could find was too large a diameter. Okay, now a handmade net, as you can see, I want to explain that to you. There's no seams in it. It's just a continuous circle. You start at the top with one mesh. You end up, I start mine with 42 in the top, and I come down 8 rows, and I start my widenings. Now, a widening, I had a lady tell me over the Folklife Festival a few years ago, I was showing her the net. Oh, those are expanders. Okay, yes they are, indeed they are. An expander is something that makes it, it expands it, makes it bigger around, and they use that in their making their little things that they make, the ladies that they, what do you call it?
Crochet.
Crochet and stuff. They use to make it wider, make a doily, for instance, make something that's round. It has to expand. But anyway, we simply call them widenings. And what you do is when you start that net, after you come down 8 rows, you start your widening row. You're going to put in a widening every third mesh, and that's going to give you 14 around. Now this, the old timers. My old Minorcan ancestors, I can tell you, they made what was called a 21 widening net. Can you imagine how much webbing that would be? It made a lot of webbing, awfully heavy, a lot of weight, especially the old nets. They were making them out of cotton. Greg, and I had cotton nets. I can tell you how heavy they were. But anyway. So we move on along here. This is a handmade net. There's, like I said, no seams. and I know I've showed you this numerous times, but there's going to be people that's going to look at this video that had no idea what I'm talking about. I guarantee you they're going to see it and say, wow, that's amazing. And I got a little story I'm going to tell you in a minute, but I want to show you this. This is a modern day, and I have finished a row here. Here's my tail. I call that a tail. This blue is hard to see. It is hard to work with. This isn't something. Don't please. If you want to learn how to knit, and I've got videos on YouTube that show you every step of the way, from the first knot to sewing the lead line on it and to putting the brail lines in. I'll show you everything. So you can learn this stuff if you want to do it. And a lot of people are doing it. And so that's great. But just so you don't want to, anyway. All right, I'm just going to show you a couple. There were 2 knots. My Minorcan ancestors used 2 knots. The first one, I got to get a knot on here, one mesh tied down before I can show you that other knot. Okay. The old Spanish knot was a knot that's been around for thousands of years. This is a knot that was used by our Native Americans, people, that were making nets thousands of years ago. This is a knot they used. And this was simply, you pick up the mesh. Can you see that? Phil's going to zoom in, all right. See what I'm doing? I'm going to pick that mesh up. All right, I'm going to bring it down and hold it. The key to this is holding that thing tight against that board. You have to keep it tight. If you don't, you're going to tie a slip knot. You don't want slip knot. You pull it down tight, and it's a simple loop You come around like that, you come under and in between, and when you come up here to tie that, the secret importance is tie it right up on top of that loop. This is what I call a loop, and you want to tie that knot right up on top of that loop. If you don't, if you tie it below it, it's going to slip on you. You're going to have a bunch of slip knots. Okay, with that out the way, the second knot, the one I use, and you know, a lot of my ancestors were using that old knot. My father, he never tied nothing but the Spanish knot. He never learned had no desire to learn the English knot. And of all things, why they call it the Flying Dutchman, I've gone over that. I've done videos on showing you the Flying Dutchman. But anyway, to me, it's the English knot. It was brought over by the English. But anyway, it's a more complicated, but it ties a nice double knot. You go around that little finger, and you make your loop. You come around, go through that loop that's around your little finger, and you pick up the mesh. And what you're going to do, when you come through that mesh and you come down, you hold it nice and tight. You're going to it ties a double knot. Ties a double knot. So when you let it go at one time, it pulls a nice tight knot. With that said, this is a handmade net. I'm repeating myself. You need to hear this. There's no panels here sewn together. This is the net maker ties every knot. And there's a few of us around. There's a few. They're still proficient enough to make a net from start to finish. I'm going to put this down really. I've covered everything because, I don't know, by the time 1955 rolled around, my father had bought this little filling station down in St. Augustine, and I had, you know, in my spare time, I would sit there and make nets. And anyway, so that's what I said about 1955. Now, a little history. I'm only going to go back to the 1940s on my end of this. I mean, you know, but they were made the same way. That knot I showed you, the first knot I showed you, was thousands of years. Anyhow, I had a guy reach out, a net maker, young fellow, reach out to me from Hawaii. And somehow he got on YouTube and he started looking at some of my videos, and I guess he couldn't believe what he was seeing because he had no idea that he knew how to make nets. He was making nets out of monofilament, but what I'm fixing to tell you was amazing to me. I had no idea that things were being used that way, and I'm talking 2023, okay? That's this year. The way they fish in Hawaii, he explained it to me, and he sent me a video showing it. I mean, I tell you what, I was really surprised. But if it's the only place you can go fishing, and that is around rocks and coral and things, the nets they use, it's a cast net. It has no brail lines in it. It has no hand line. It's nothing but a net. And what they do, now he's talking about him and his buddy, they ride their bicycles down this road, dirt road, and they come as far as they can ride. They leave the bicycles and they got to walk through the woods, and they come out to the water's edge, and there's the water with rocks and stuff. And what they do, they cast the net right over the rocks and whatever's on the bottom. They put on a mask and snorkel. Imagine that, a mask and snorkel. And he dives down into the water, and he gets the fish out, balls up the net, or gets the fish out from under the net because it's around the rocks and stuff. They remove the fish, then they retrieve the net. I mean, that's fact. I couldn't believe it. I told him, I said, that's the way people were fishing 1,000 years ago, for goodness sake. But yeah, he supported that with a video. I mean, if he'd have told me, I'd have thought he was pulling my leg. But I mean, he said, and I said, is that the only way you guys fish? He said, well, that's the way I was taught. He said, that's the way we fished. But he was interested. He was interested in a net, you know, with the you know, like the modern stuff, like, you know, like I make. But he's going to make it himself. I told him, I'll help you in any way. Call me, which he did. He called me on the phone a couple of times talking. Very interesting. He's got some family in Orlando. He was going to come visit him. He wanted to come over and meet me at some point. I guess he will. But I couldn't believe that. You know, they're still fishing that way. We're talking, I mean, believe it or not, Ripley would have loved that one. But that's basically what I wanted to tell you, is that kind of stuff is it's going on. Third world countries, third world countries, you know, they're still using cotton. You know, they're making nets out of cotton, as heavy as they are. And they're using Spanish nets, bag nets. I don't make bag nets. I turned down small mesh nets. I had a guy contact me the other day. He wanted me to make him a 10-foot, quarter-inch mesh net. I just wrote him back. I'm sorry, but you know, I don't make nets. I don't make a shrimp net over 7 foot anymore, and 5/8 mesh is the smallest diameter mesh that I use. But people still using them, and hey, that's what you want. That's what you want. But you're gonna have to buy. You're not gonna find anybody out there hand making a quarter-inch mesh net, not to sell. I mean, there's some people making them, you know, for their own personal use. In fact, my Menorcan ancestors and my father, back in the, you know, I know that in the 40s they were still making the quarter-inch mesh, 4-foot net. 4 foot. That's as big a shrimp net as they made. But my goodness, the stuff was thick. You know, my father just tell me stories about, you know, they would go trout fishing, and he'd take and make one throw along, go at low tide, anywhere along the river shore, up around St. Augustine, up around the fort, and all up along the river shore, up there. He'd make one throw and catch enough shrimp, live shrimp, to fish with all day. And he'd catch trout 2 at a time. But anyway, that's all history. That's all long gone. I don't know what else. I'd like to hear from you if you got any comments on this. I don't know if I covered everything. That is a handmade net. There's no, you know, you can say what you want. Sewing panels together, they call them handmade. I mean, that's fine. Call it what you like. That is going to be a handmade net. I don't have one. I can't keep one. As fast as I get one made, there's somebody waiting on it. So anyway, so I don't have a completed net that I can show you. But I don't know, Phil, did I cover everything?
Yes.
I think I did all right. I hope I've enlightened you a little bit about this, but I want you to understand, understand that nets were made by hand, and they were made by hand up into the early 1950s, when the Japanese patented the first webbing machine, when they started making the panels, and they were making the first panels were made out of nylon. They made panel nets. Still, you can buy nylon. You can buy panel nylon nets today, as we speak. There's people out there that are selling them just like they're selling the monofilament. So they are available. But by far the majority of the panel nets are made out of monofilament. But anyway, I guess that's covered everything. I don't know. for goodness sake, I hope you're having a marvelous summer, and I'd like to hear from you. Let me know how you're doing, how your net making's coming along. My old buddy, I was trying to think of his name now, that he keeps up with me, and I guess I'll hear from him. But for goodness sake, take care. I gave you the information where I'm at. I'm in St. Augustine, Florida, Menorcan Magic, handmade cast nets. And with that said, for goodness sake, take care of yourself. Until next time.